to see you again.
Hi.
Alright, so before we get started, I just want to go back over the confidentiality that you signed that form last week, basically stating that anything we talk about stays between us unless there's threats of harm to yourself or to another. So just keep that in mind, so feel free to be open with me today about anything.
Okay.
Just to refresh on things, last week we had talked about how you were feeling stressed about your major, not necessarily your major, but maybe your career choices. You were kind of struggling with what you wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
Are we still at that point today?
Yeah, I've just been thinking a lot about it, and I guess what my problem is, I'm just torn because I know I want to work with people, and I love working with people, and I know I'm in the right major, but at the same time, I don't want to go into a profession that has to deal with the different systems, the different statewide systems, or even nationwide systems, and I not so much in particular DHS, but I really don't want to be involved in that side of it, and I don't want a job that will keep me up at night concerned about the well-being of my clients or whoever it is that I'm serving. And so I'm torn because I do want to work with people and I do want to help people, but maybe not in such an emotionally taxing way.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that because your major is human development, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and you do love working with people, and you love that one-on-one contact, but you're just not sure if the emotional side is something that you will be able to deal with. So when you say emotional, and you mentioned DHS, but what other areas are you kind of thinking you just aren't for you?
Well, I guess the problem is that I used to work with children who were involved with DHS. And as much as I loved it and I loved being with the kids, I absolutely despised seeing them go places that I felt and others felt were not the right places for them.
Right.
And I feel like even now, when I haven't worked there for so long, but even now I'm still concerned about where they're at and how they're doing. And I guess I just kind of came to the conclusion that one day I'm going to want to have my own family, and I would want my focus to be more on my family than other people's families. And honestly, that makes me feel selfish and sad, I guess, for myself, because I feel like my morals have almost changed, but I just need to do what's best for me.
Well, okay, from what you're saying and how I'm kind of understanding this is that you do love working with people, and it's understandable that you were in a high stress environment with that other job. But there's so many different careers out there working with people one-on-one, and they don't have to deal with that. They don't have to deal with children who come from homes without parents or abusive parents, and they deal with families and children, but not necessarily even like in a therapy aspect. So it's still those people. And I don't want you to think that negatively about yourself, about your morals changing, or to feel selfish. I'm not sure. When you say selfish, what do you mean, like in those morals changing? How do you see yourself? How do you see that yourself has changed from how you were maybe before you started college to where you are now?
I just feel like before college and even my first year in college, my first priority has always been other people, and those particularly who are less fortunate, like the children that I worked with. They were always my main priority. But then as life progressed and I started to see myself more in the role of a wife and a mother later on down the road, and starting to really picture my future, I started to put my hypothetical future before these kids and these people, and I feel bad that I always loved that about, in a weird way, I always loved that about myself, that I cared so much more about other people than I do myself. but it was so taxing on me. I just,
Right.
I couldn't do it anymore. I just had to start thinking, I felt like I had to start thinking of myself, and kind of started to change career paths, and now I'm just confused.
Well, I think that that's all about like what life is about is like figuring out and what college is about, figuring out where you're supposed to be. And you've had an experience where you found out that's not the type of environment you want to work in.
Mm-hmm.
So let's try to focus maybe on are there any areas that you have thought about that still involve people that interest you?
Well, I've thought a lot about human relations, and I've talked to a bunch of HR professionals about the employee relations side of it, and just kind of being that person at work that helps employees and supervisors connect and work well together and manage conflict. And if people have problems or concerns, they can come to me about it, and I can still better people's lives, but in a way that still allows me to live my own.
Right. I think it's good that you said you have talked to professors and individuals in that industry. And I think it's important for you to continue to make connections with them.
Yeah.
So maybe even before we speak next week with each other, maybe a little assignment that you could do is to go out and talk to someone and have a one-on-one and maybe find out the pros and the cons that come with it. You expressed that the emotional side of other areas just isn't what you want to do you feel like maybe you would take it home to your family. And so maybe you could discuss with individuals in the human relations the pros and cons or the emotional side of it. I mean, does that sound like something possibly you could do?
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's something I could do, and definitely feel like that's something I should be doing, and hopefully this will just give me that push to go and do it.
Yeah, I think that will help you a lot, and then maybe next week we could discuss how that went and how that's, if that's kind of changed your mind about that type of work, and we can move forward from there.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, well, I'll see you next week, Carrie, and if you'll just kind of go find a professional and maybe shadow them or talk to them about all that, then we'll discuss it next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. Have a good week.
You too.